this episode of Carlie's Couch, we'll explore the concept of the path of least resistance. What is it? How can you apply it to your life? And what impact will it have on your personal growth and decision making?
Ooh, she turned on the commercial voice for us today. What is it?
It like starts out like that and then it goes like and then through the rest of the episode. So I'm gonna try to stay calm and collected today.
But how you doing today?
I'm feeling pretty good. There's a lot of action going on across the board with work, with friends, lives, and all kind of stuff. And so as the summer is starting to wind down, just, I don't know, continuing to get things all done. But in general, everything is feeling pretty good right now. How about you?
Man, I feel excited. It's been so busy, but all great things. And just following my joy. If y'all listen, we had an episode about centering joy. And I was training one of my clients and this song came up and I was like, oh, this is like my mom's favorite band. And I was like, are they still alive? Are they still touring? They just so happened to be in Inglewood this past Sunday.
Cool.
So I got to go see one of her favorite bands. Their lead singer and the only original member is 81. So shout the fuck
What's
out
the
to
band?
Steve Miller Band.
Oh, that's so random.
So
Cool.
I got to go see him. I got to see Journey. And Journey, if y'all didn't know, random fact of the day, has a Filipino lead singer. So when Steve Perry retired, they did a search and they found Arnel Pineda in the Philippines doing Journey covers. Flew him out to LA and he's been the lead singer for 16 years. So I got to see a Filipino rock star. And then I got to see a smidge of Def Leppard, but they weren't my favorite. So I just wanted to see them. But they were rock stars. So one of them had their little abs out. So.
Well, that's cool. It's good when things happen like that, when you just kind of think about something and then you look and it's like, oh, I can do it. And I feel like that's the moment where it's like you could decide to be like, nah, you know, or actually just do a thing. And that's nice and fun that you went ahead and did the thing. So that's pretty cool. This week, we have a question from the couch. Where do you struggle with grammar? Like every time.
When. I don't know the difference apparently. So I be struggling whenever I'm trying to think of which word to use.
Oh, whenever and when.
Yeah. But so that's me.
Somebody else said when to use the semicolon and commas. Oh, so
I might
you
be an
just
offender.
stringing.
I mean, I'm not a run-on sentence girl, but
I like a lot of semicolons.
yeah. Someone said I before E after C.
Another one said straight up proofreading before I send emails. So that's where you need to get Grammarly. So that's a great program that will turn up everything you write everywhere. Grammarly.
This is not an ad, but y'all should pay
That sounds
us.
like something Damo would have said too. Damo's the worst. I'm sorry, I'm just talking junk about friends and stuff for no reason. But that made me think about it because he'd be like, hey, I got to reply to, this email, like work stuff or thinking about decks and stuff. And he would send it to me and I'd be like,
bruh.
like it's nowhere near real sentences. Like I get it, what you're trying to say, but it just, you're like, yeah, I don't write, bruh.
That reminds me of a friend in college asking me to help her with a paper. And I did. I marked that hoe up and she got so mad at me.
Right, like, did you want me to do it or not? Like, what's up? At least now you can just throw them things online and just get it fixed up for you.
Someone struggles with spelling. And
Poor
then affect versus effect.
Every once in a while, I gotta say the sentence a certain way, and sometimes I'll look up real quick. What's another one that's like similar to that, like affect and effect?
Objective and subjective.
Oh yeah, I don't really know the difference between those. And every time I will have to look that up. But there's a few that sometimes I will look them up. But for the most part, I don't use them incorrectly. Like I'm a person, I try to, you know what I mean? Like look at what I wrote, unless it's like super fast or informal or whatever. Like I'm pretty okay.
Same. I used to be really obsessed with always having everything like perfect and right and like would correct people. I don't do that no more, but that was old me.
That's funny. Well, y'all work on those things. Those are common, common grammar things, grammatical issues.
Just don't be out here confusing lose and loose. That's the one I hate to see, boy.
Yeah, there's some stuff that's just
it.
like, why is this happening?
Hate it.
I hate it too. Today, we are talking about the path of least resistance. When you hear that, just what do you think about?
I think of a river like rushing and just flowing.
Okay. I think about like Yoda or somebody who's like a wise person who's just, they're chill because they know. You know everything because you know nothing. And I'm here, you're there, whatever happens, gonna happen. That's the vibe I get when I hear something like path of least resistance. But when you say the path of least resistance, it's often understood as this is the easiest way to achieve something and or the most straightforward way to achieve something, as opposed to, oh, I gotta do this and this and this and this and this and this first. Like, the path of least resistance gets me right to where I need to be.
And it can also represent a flow state in life where things happen with minimal effort. So it's like for me, that's like when you get in alignment, things just flow. It's like, come on, baby, we going.
Yeah, so there's slight differences to those kind of two ways to describe it, because sometimes a thing is easier for you, perhaps because you may be in a flow state, and it that's just you're just there, you can do it. Whereas that may not be the easiest or most straightforward way for somebody else to maybe do something. And so there's a little bit more literal, and then there's this kind of like a little more figurative way of looking at the path of least resistance.
And so when I was thinking about some real life examples, I had two things that kind of came top of mind for me when it comes to the path of least resistance. The first will be business school. So I knew I wanted to go. I was out that hoe. I had got accepted to number 3 school in the world in Barcelona, and I was going to go. And I had went on a tour and a visit and got to meet my classmates. I was about to sign a lease, and then something told me, like, it was God, intuition, whatever. It was like, just wait until tomorrow to sign your lease. When I had gotten back from Barcelona. And then I woke up and my financial aid had fell through. And so I couldn't go anymore. And so then I was like, okay, I'm in this little crossroads. I could either really fight for to go to business school in this thing, in this exact way that I thought it had to happen to be right. I could stay, wait a year, and do business school next year and just like reset. But I was like really upset and like I just don't want to be here anymore. Or I can apply third round and like shotgun them things out and just do the best I can. So I applied to USC in June. I applied end of May. I interviewed in June. I got accepted in June. I moved out in July and things. So for me, the path of least resistance, like I thought about what was in alignment and I shot my shot. And then whenever I chose something, the way to get to USC was so easy. Like it just flowed. Like there weren't any mishaps. I found an apartment, everything just like boom, bam, bam. Like, and so that for me, when I think of path of least resistance, I think about I could have really fought for this thing that I thought was how it had to happen or what exactly I wanted in this, or I could just do the thing that I can do right now, and it just flew. It just took off.
That's a great and very clear example. Episode over. We hope you enjoyed. I mean, because that is it. So I guess now we go into, well, how do I know, which path is the path, right? Because faced with something like that, did you feel like you knew, well, if I try to fight it, because maybe you just call one person, they'd be like, well, actually, yeah, here you go. Here's 100,000. You know what I mean? So how can we identify this path of least resistance? And what do those practical tips look like? Like in that instance, let's start with that. What made you think that's going to be a push? That's going to be difficult.
I went with how I felt about it. Like it felt very heavy and very, like I felt very let down, very disappointed. It felt so hard to even try to push on that. And I'm not one to give up on things. I just know that sometimes you got to let go of how you think things have to manifest for them to be right. And so I would say like intuition, like following your gut and your feelings about a thing, and being like obviously in tune with yourself and very self-aware. But then whenever you are tuned in, really listening to that intuition.
Yeah. Another way to identify the path of least resistance, and again, this is, let's say, I could do this, or I could do this, or I could do this, however many choices you have in front of you. Evaluate your stress levels so you can use your body as a measurement tool for when you think about doing this thing. How do you, like, what's the stress levels? How do you feel? When you think about doing this thing, what's the stress levels? How do you feel? For me, my watch will go off when my heart rate is abnormal. And I notice the times that happens is when I'm in certain types of meetings. Not necessarily meaning like, oh, I'm having a difficulty in the meeting or I'm fighting against something in particular in that moment. And yet, like in an example that you gave, thinking about a thing or trying to pursue this direction, it's off top. It's already so stressful. And that's literally unhealthy for your body. And so weighing your intuition and adding stress in as a factor can help you identify, well, which path might make the most sense. And I will stress, too, that there's a few more ways to identify it. But thinking about all of these together, because again, it's not just that's a little hard or like that's a little stressful, because then you're not gonna be doing anything, right? And we'll talk about that later too. But think about this combination of things and really deciding, all right, this will actually be the path that makes sense for me right now.
Yeah, that actually makes me think about the second example that I had was about personal training. So after business school, I decided to forego becoming a consultant and taking like a real quote unquote job. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna do personal training. I'm going to seek the simplest thing, the simplest way that I know how to make money, and that gave me less stress. Like, yes, it was stressful because I didn't have a lot of money, and that was super stressful. So we're not saying you avoid stress altogether, like Lexi was saying, but that was more in alignment with me and less stressful in the simplest way for me to start working towards my dreams. Because the idea of taking a job and selling out, like how I felt it would be selling out for me to go get this career I don't want to do and do these things, like just weighed on me so heavy. And so tuning in and then also following like the simplest way to do a thing.
And that's so important. I cannot stress enough how often I will overcomplicate something where it's like, usually it's just you just do the thing. And or like in business, for example, and that's why I'm so glad I have my team, because I can make all this plan, but then when I run it against them and they're like, well, you could, fix this on the site and make this content, do this and this and this and this, or you could just post this, or it's like the things you can do to immediately just get to your dollars to help you build up to the space where you could spend a little more time. Because sometimes we don't need to do all that. And sometimes we kind of use that to kind of help procrastinate or just, keeps you from being ready when it's like, I could just call somebody. I remember I didn't even have a website for my company for the first 5-6 years, at all. So you can get straight to what you need to get to. And sometimes that's difficult because it means you just have to straight up execute something.
And I think that's another huge one, is like being mindful when you're putting unnecessary blockages in the way or like making
obstacles.
things harder than they have to be. I think that, like you said, so many people get stuck at that part of their dream, at that part of whatever they want to do for themselves or their body. Man, I want to get more in shape, but I don't have time and I don't have the right running shoes and this and this and this. And you can literally just start walking around your building in your work shoes.
Mm-hmm. And so also a way to follow the path of least resistance is to let go of control. And Carlie has alluded to this in saying, don't be married to how something needs to look. That's super hard as well. You have a vision perhaps in your mind. One thing that's weird about me with work is I ain't never had a vision. And that sounds crazy, but not had like, never mind about calling. But I ain't never had it. That's why I'm like, it keeps changing or not changing. I'll say evolving more than changing. But, and also I'm like, you do need to have those specific things you want to be moving towards, right? So I see a balance between that. But letting go of unnecessary control means, for me, it means, okay, I'm doing what feels good and is aligned right now. What is the path of least resistance, regardless of if it looks like how I thought it might look, if it looks like what the next person said it should look like, as long as it is right for me, by whatever those standards may be. Doing
what you can. And letting go of everything else. Like that, it really is like that, letting go of all the shit you can't control in these situations. Paying attention to repeated challenges. So noticing if you feel like Sisyphus, the guy who's pushing a rolling rock up a hill, like his whole life, if you notice in certain areas, if you're keep trying to force a thing or like keep coming up into a bunch of resistance around a thing, maybe that is not the path for you.
Right. Leave that path alone.
And not saying that it's all easy and it won't be, but if you keep getting like big old red flags from the universe, like maybe try a different way.
Another thing that's very important is recognizing that sometimes we are addicted to resistance and are addicted to air quote struggle or working hard. I found that with me too. I'm very effort based, and so sometimes if things seem easy, I'm not one of those like, oh, it must be too good if it's too easy. Although it can be, but I will think like, oh, it's okay for things to be easy. And so one thing is to really evaluate how you feel about hard work or struggle or what you have to go through to get to something, and assess if you might need to let go of this like need to have resistance or let go of kind of feeling like it has to have some type of struggle for you to move forward, because it actually doesn't.
I think that's so important. And it makes me remember the first time I heard the path of least resistance. And I remember balancing the thoughts and struggling with, well, does that mean that I'm just taking the easy way? Like, am I not, like, what is the path of least resistance the easy way? Like, yeah. And so what are some thoughts around, is the path of least resistance the same as always taking the easy way?
And when we say, like, oh, you're taking the easy way out or taking the easy way, we're in alignment that's typically looked at as a negative thing, right? I would say so. All the examples I could think of, we say that to tell somebody that you're not trying hard enough, you're not doing enough, you're not putting enough effort into what you really want. The path of least resistance is different. And it's different because the path of least resistance does not question your commitment to the thing. It's more about the how the things get done. And so maybe taking the easy way out, to me, sounds a little more like I'm giving up on this vision, or I'm giving up on this dream, or I'm giving up on the final thing you want to get to. But hopefully, if you're looking for a path of least resistance, that's still going towards the same goal, and you're open to perhaps what could be a distraction, but like maybe actually this is a thing to do right now, and then it comes back around to that, and or going with what is going to have a good impact or positive impact on you now that may be easier, but without abandoning the goal.
I like that. I was trying to think of an actual example or something to talk through it, and I feel like physical health is always an easy one. So I'll start there, but we can go somewhere else. What I don't think the path of least resistance is, or what it's not, is staying in your comfort zone. The path of least resistance is not always staying in your comfort zone. I think you think about your overarching goal, like I want to be healthy and I want to feel good in my body. No, it's not easy to completely change your diet. No, it's not easy to work out all the time. No, it's not this. But if you're set on, I'm going to go to CrossFit 7 days a week, I'm going to lift weights, I'm going to go be like David Goggins and run 1,000,000 miles every day, and your body doesn't do that, then you're fighting to do those things. Like that could be not taking the path of least resistance versus like, I'm going to start making small changes that feel good and feel easy right now, that are, easier in my life, and then building up to that. But you're not letting go of the fact that you want to be healthier and live happier. That's
good. And that helps me clarify a real example in that space as well. In my health and fitness journey, I'll say maybe since like 2017, 18, like when I was working with a trainer, over time, so I enjoyed working with the trainer, and then something happens to my car, right? And so I'm like, actually, for a while, I'm like Ubering to get to this gym. It's like, it's doing too much. But over the years, I have done different things. So I may not stay with training, but then it's like, okay, I started playing tennis. Then when things kind of switched up a little bit, I started doing Pilates, and then things changed a little bit. I started running, and every time I try different things or move into different spaces, I'm looking at this as exploring all of these options in a way to understand, like, what's doing the best for me, or what fits my life, like what fits my schedule, what fits where I am, like mentally, or what level I'm at, what's getting me the results that I actually care about. And for me, the result I always care about the most, honestly, is consistency and actually doing the thing. It's not really as much about the health goal, and I want to feel good and look good. And so is that make sense as like, so I don't necessarily like take the easy way out, and I have switched around and adapted and understood how different methods work for me, to where, because I'm always changing everything all the time. My routine, how I plan, the way I write journal, the way I write my goals, the way I plan my day, my week, my whatever, that changes every 6 to 8 months, how I do a thing. And maybe part of what I need is I do need like different variety, and I do need to try things in order to feel like I'm in a flow. Because when I'm in a flow, then I stop thinking about, let me try something different. And now I'm just going, and it works. And, you know, the health is part of my day easily. And how I set my day is easy because I found something instead of sitting in a place trying to force a method to work.
Yes. So I think also what I'm hearing and what I think we're both alluding to is that whenever we're saying the path of least resistance versus an easy way out, the easy way out to me is not trying, is not pushing the needle, is not growing, is not getting out of your comfort zone. The path of least resistance is putting all that energy and effort forward and letting the universe kind of guide what's working with whatever method to get you to where you want to be or closer towards your goals.
Okay.
So you're always facing the challenge. You're always doing the thing. You're always showing up for yourself. But that might look different depending on the path of least resistance in that period in your life.
Right. And we've alluded throughout this conversation to the fact that difficulties will always arise and that things are not always easy. So, Carlie, how do we discern between like we're taking the path of least resistance versus actually maybe I need to face this challenge a little bit more? Like, is there anything that you could say that comes out of a space that might be stressful or might be a little challenging, but that might be like, you know what, maybe you explore that a little bit more?
Yeah, life. Like working towards your goals, like being an engineer, like graduating college, working towards things that feel really hard. It's not easy. Like even going to business school and deciding to not take a job after, like anything you're working towards, I think you're facing a challenge head on. The path of least resistance is just the following your intuition around the best way to get there in that moment and not being married to how you thought it had to look. So I thought I was going to, you know, have this better company and it's going to do this and do this. And, you know, if I was really trying to force it and fighting against it, I'm not fighting a challenge head on. I'm trying to force something. And I think that's the difference. Like you're always putting forth the effort. You're always facing challenges head on, even in the path of least resistance, even in working out. When you go run your miles, it's not necessarily always easy, but that is the path of least resistance in this time in your life. My bad. Got excited with my hands. But I think every time you're putting forth effort, you're facing challenges head on and just not being married to the method to what that looks like.
One example I think about with that specific question, though, and in times where I can remember, as far as an example, an experience for me of trying to push against instead of going the path of least resistance, has been with relationships. And so to think about now, I will say there are times where there's a path of least resistance, and then sometimes there are things that you actually need to challenge. So, for example, in relationships, I very much have had to work a lot on communication, how I communicate and communicating, listening, etc. It could have been very easy with a lot of situations to just be like, this is not the person for me. And I very much embraced the challenge in a couple of relationships, the challenge of like, all right, this is a conflict. Don't run away from it. You know, like I had to practice not avoiding and practice going head on into things, which again is not necessarily saying to completely walk away from that is the path of least resistance, because that is like that's taking the easy way out. And what I learned was with conflict and conflict resolution in relationships, that actually the path of least resistance is just saying exactly how you feel and having those conversations. And so what was so interesting is that was a huge game changer, because in the last couple of years, I've very much changed. Like, I can just say what I need to say. And again, of course, we always say, you know, respectfully and tone and da-da-da-da, right? So that's not what I'm alluding to. Like, you just do whatever you want to do and say what you want to say. And yet, wow, I had a very challenging relationship with communication. And then I got another one where I was like, okay, I'm going to try to say what I need to say. And it was met so much differently. It was like yeah, I can see why you might think that. Why you would feel like that. Like, I could do better with blah, blah, blah. And I was like, so I did learn that it was important here, because we kept having the same like conflict because I would avoid. And then when I said, you know what, I know I have to just speak up more, and I did it. And then it became the path of least resistance. Like, to just say what you need to say, because now I guess if I say what I need to say, if you don't accept or that doesn't work, then that's the path of least resistance. Is now like, okay, cool. And understanding that, oh, this is not aligned with me where I need to be. And so I think it's cool how some challenging things to us are important for us to approach as a challenge, knowing, or maybe not knowing, but like, because that will help you realize that that is a better path.
And I think that the misunderstanding is that the path of least resistance is easy. The path of least resistance is always going to feel good, because it's not. Like healing yourself and growing relationships and, you know, unlearning things is not easy, and it doesn't feel good. But that's a much easier path and a much better path, a path of least resistance than going through your whole life
200 times
forever. And so it's still challenging. It's still meeting everything head on, but understanding that even on the path that seems like it's flowing faster and coming a little bit easier to you, you're still going to go through ups and downs. You're still going to have tough days, but your decision to show up every day and meet those challenges is what keeps you on that path. The moment you step outside of that and stay in your comfort zone, like, the water really can't push you through it.
Yeah. At the end of the day, the path of least resistance is the path that honors yourself. And so that's not always easy. And that's going to be the path of least resistance.
Every time.
And so that's where the practice comes in of, I might be scared to honor myself right now. And that's going to keep happening until you do that. So sometimes the path of least resistance is actually walking through the wall. Oh my gosh, Hunter x Hunter example. So Hunter x Hunter, when they were in the tower, they had 72 hours to get through this tower. And there's 3 or 4 of them, 4 of these people in the crew. That's all you need to know. You don't have to know what we're talking about. Who are in this crew, and they get to the very last step, and it's like, okay, people in this room, they were surrounded by like axes and swords and stuff on the walls, and the instructions to get out of this room to finish this challenge was, hey, you can choose 2 of you to go this easy route. That's going to be a slide that goes right to the end. Or you can all, and that's why they have all the weapons, right? Because it's like, oh, they're going to fight it out and da-da-da. Or they're like, you can go through this challenging door. All of you can go through this challenging door. But the caveat is this door takes 72 hours to get through. And they had like an hour. And so it's like, oh, what do we do? And it was so cute because Gon, the super positive one, what ends up happening is he's like, they chose the door that everybody can go through that takes 72 hours, and then took all the axes off the wall and broke through the wall to get down the slide to go down the easy way. And so it's like, instead of us fighting and da-da-da, we can still honor ourselves. Like, no, we came here together. We want to get through this together. How can we find a way that honors what we want to do and how we want to do it? And so I was watching that like, oh, like, you did it. Because it's like, you always have the option to do what's right for you and what really makes sense for you. And so they were like, okay, cool, we'll take this. And then they went around and still figured it out. And so that's the kind of innovative way that we can think and approach life, knowing that it's always going to work out for us if it is for us, like the way we're moving.
That's so beautiful. And if y'all haven't watched Hunter x Hunter, that's me
it's
and
so
Lexi.
good. I was watching it during
Lexi.
the day just to get a little inspo. I'm like, damn, my
Kilo
man's
over
inspired.
here.
Yeah.
So whenever you choose the path of least resistance in your life and it becomes a practice for you, you can have reduced stress, increased productivity, and a huge greater sense of peace can come over your life. And like Lexi mentioned, there's also more creative solutions. Like
sure
the thought, exactly. Look, the more creative solutions, you get more innovative.
You're not ever in a box where you have to do something a certain way.
Yeah. And then there's opportunities that can align with your true desires, with your true self, and ways to honor yourself.
And then also to keep this even, potential drawbacks of the path of least resistance, or if you think about it in the wrong way, it can lead you to missing out on growth opportunities. So to completely just follow things, you know, what the path sets for you, or not, let me not confuse you, what other people say or the system or whatever it is, you don't have growth opportunities of like you actually doing the things that are aligned with you. Also, you could take a risk of becoming complacent. So you can, if you're always like, if you're a person who as soon as you see anything, you're like, nope, then you will end up being complacent. And so pay attention to make sure that you're not masking the path of least resistance with you just not doing anything, as Carlie was saying earlier. And sometimes those challenges and obstacles do lead to personal growth. They do. It's just a matter of, is this challenge killing me or is it adding to me? And that's something to kind of think about, like how you could tell that. But a lot of the challenges are good for us. Now, when you see the same one over and over, it's like, let's do something different this time. And so it really is a matter of paying attention to the experiences in your life, paying attention to who you are, what you need, and recognizing that you have lots of ways to move about.
Yeah, and I would say those drawbacks are for like not growing. I wouldn't say they're necessarily tied to like the path of least resistance, because we kind of like fixed that earlier, but there is a lot of opportunity for growth. But just being mindful, like life doesn't always have to be really hard. I think it's important to know like what you believe too. Like if you always think money is going to be real hard to make, it is. If you think relationships have to be hard and difficult, they will be. And so also checking our own assumptions and biases with all of these things in our lives.
Yes. Please share this episode with somebody you know who would like it. Give us 5 stars, give us reviews, leave comments. And this week we want to encourage you to be mindful of what you're pushing up against. What resistance are you stuck trying to figure out instead of letting it go and moving a different direction? Consider embracing an easier path that aligns with your goals and with who you are.
Bye, y'all.